Begin today the Gemara at the last line on Daf Chav Zayin with base. Gemara is going back to what it said in the Mishnah that we learn out Kishem Shamayim Boitken Oisa Kachamayim Boitken Oisai. The water that inspects the woman and it affects her, brings the curse upon her. It affects her and it affects him. When the Mishnah says it affects him, it doesn't specify in the Mishnah who that Oisai, who that him is. So the Gemara, so Oisai, when it says in the Mishnah Oisai, Laman, who is this affecting the waters? Does it mean that it affects the husband himself? Baal mai of it. Why should the husband get affected by the bad behavior of his wife? If you'll argue and say that the case here is the is bay oven. If the husband has a sin as well. When Rashi says we're not talking here stam about any sin, but we're talking about a sin in relation to this that she's a Sotah. That after she becomes a Sotah, he's not supposed to be living with her. So if the husband has a sin that he went and had a relation with her after this, so then bot gilei maya, the water will inspect him and he will have the same punishment, the same curse that the pasuk describes on the woman. But the problem is that can't be, because ki is bei avain. If he has a sin that he had a relation with her, bididei mi bot gilei maya lidida. So again, if there's the way you read this is ki ispe oven bididei. If there's a sin that he has with having a relation with her after she became a Sotah, does the waters at all have any effect on her? The waters is then doesn't work altogether. She can't drink it, because Vatanya, we learned in the Braisa that says v'nika ishme avain, that the man, if he is clean, if he is pure from any aveda, and then v'ha'isha ha'i tisa savaina, this woman will have to carry her sin. In other words, the Braisa teaches what it means is bizman she'ish menukim avain. If the man is clean from an aveda, stayed away from his wife after she became a Sotah, then amayim boitken esishtay. Then the waters will inspect the wife, and then we could maybe say that it has an effect on someone else. But ein ha'ish menukim avain, if the man is not clean from an aveda, he did not stay away from her, and amayim boitken esishtay, the waters doesn't work for his wife either. So then we can't say over here that when we're speaking about boitken oisai, that it goes on the husband because he had a relation with his wife. The Elo says the Gemara, what does the oisai mean? Lebayil. It goes on the bayil, it goes on this suspected man, the man that she was secluded with. But if it goes on the bayil, why does the Mishnah use this expression of oisai and oisa and oisai? Listni kidiktani seifa. Why doesn't the Mishnah use a clearer term like it says in the next case of the Mishnah? What does it say there? Kishem shasur labal. If she becomes a Sotah, just like she's now aser to go back to her husband, kach asur labayil. So too she becomes aser to this bayil. She could never marry this man that she's suspected of having a relation with. So there the Mishnah spells that clearly, baal and bayil. Over here it doesn't. Over here it says oisa and oisai. So that's why the Gemara is discussing this. Maybe the oisai is the baal, it's someone else. Why doesn't it say a clear lashon that it goes on the bayil? So the Gemara explains la'olam lebayil. No, the pshat we said is correct. When it says in the Mishnah here oisai, him, it goes on the bayil. Why did the Mishnah not spell that out? Because v'reishe I did tani oisa. Because in the Reisha it begins with the expression of oisa, that the water inspects her. So tani oisai. So the lashon is similar. So it uses the term oisai that goes on him, which is the bayil. Seife, Aidi, the Tani Baal, in the Seife, when it says Baal, that the Isser goes on the husband, so Tane, Baal, so it uses the term Baal, similar to the term Baal. But the pshat remains, as we said, that in the Reisha, Oisai means the Baal, just like in the Seife when it speaks about the Baal.
Not answering the question.
It is, because it's synchronizing the Lashon.
You should have used a different Lashon. That's what
No, it couldn't have. What should it say?
Change for Baal, Isha. That was the
but true, but Isha and Boil is not necessarily doesn't have to go together. And in the next part of the Mishnah, Kishem Shasura Aser Loi Kach Aser Loi, should say twice Loi Lashon Zachar. Both the Baal and the Boil are a Zachar. It has to say Baal. In the Seifa, it has to say Baal. In the Reisha, it doesn't have to say Isha. We know when it says Oisa, we know it's talking about the Isha. Who else is it? Oisa is her, the Isha. So once it says in the Reisha Oisa, it doesn't have to say anything else. It says Oisa. In the Seifa, it has to say Baal. So over there, it says Baal. Going now to the drasha that the Mishnah brought. Shenemar ubo. Now here the Mishnah brought that it says in the pasuk twice that uba hamayim hama'arim, that these cursed waters or bitter waters will come into him. But they will come into her, they'll come into him. So the Gemara asks on this, ba'u ka'ama. What's the pshat in the Mishnah? Is the Mishnah saying that we learn it all from one word? It could have said ba'u without a vav, and it says ubahu with a vav. So therefore the extra vav teaches me that the waters come in to affect her, and it also affects the bayil. That's what we learn it out from. Or rather, uba'u ka'amar. That we learn it out from the fact that it says in the pasuk twice. There's a pasuk where it says uva ba mayim amarim eila b'meim eyayich latzis beten, and then it says it again v'hishka seisha, and over there it says uva ba mayim amarim lamarim. It says again twice, so it's not the vav at all. Tashema. So the Gemara says we could understand what the Mishnah means here from the next drasha that the Mishnah brings. What's the next drasha? Kishem shasura lebal kach asura lebayil. When it comes to the Isser that takes effect on the husband, and there's also a Isser for the Bayal. And there, what's the pasuk that it brings? Shenema nitma v'nitma. So it brings the word nitma, and then it brings v'nitma. So what do we see? Over there, it seems like that the Mishnah is saying that the drash is from the extra vav. Could have said nitma, and it says v'nitma. So that tells me that she becomes tamei for the husband and for the Bayal as well. So over here as well, ba'u, uva'u, the drasha is from the extra vav. But the Gemara does not accept this resolution here, because the Gemara says, Va'adayin tibai, you could actually still ask the question, Nitma v'nitma ka'ama, in this drasha of Nitma itself. What is the drasha? Is the drasha because it could have said Nitma, and the Bachir says you have to be good, is v'nitma? Is the drasha from the Vav? Maybe here the drasha is also just from the extra Vav, and not from the extra word that it says Nitma a second time. Nitma v'nitma ka'amar. Or maybe is the drasha from the fact that it says v'nitma twice in the pasuk. It says one time ashetiste isha tachiz isha v'nitma. Then it says again v'kines ishta v'hilay nitma. So, or it says here also v'hi nitma v'kines ishta v'hi nitma. So maybe it's darshaning from the fact that it says twice nitma, not from the vav. So there still remains a shaila. So the Gemara says tashema. But if you want to understand how to read the drasha by nitma and v'nitma, over there we could see from the continuation of the Mishnah. B'diktani seife, what does the Mishnah say afterwards? Rabbi Yomer. Rabbi says, Shnei pa'amim ha'amurim b'parsha, when it says in the Torah twice, nitma and v'nitma, echad lebal ve'echad lebayil. One is going to say that she's asa to the Baal, and one is saying that she's asa to the Bayil. That's what the Mishnah says is Rabbi's opinion. So Meklal, what do I understand from this? That Rabbi Kiva Vavi Kadarish. That Rabbi Kiva, he darshans the Vav. He's not darshaning the two times it says Nitma. He's darshaning one time it says Nitma, and then the second drasha is from the Vav of that word V'nitma. Rabbi Kiva darshans the Vav. So just like we see that when the Gemara, when the Mishnah that is brought Nitma V'nitma, that you're darshaning the Vav, so too according to Rabbi Kiva by Uvo, we're going to darshan the extra Vav. You don't have to darshan from an extra word, you darshan from the extra vav. Okay, so that resolves what the Mishnah meant. Ba'u, uba'u, it's from the vav. Okay, but now the thing is though, the fact is, when you look in the pasuk, not only is there an extra vav, but it does actually say in the pasuk uva'u more than once. And as the Gemara here is going to point out now, how many times does it say in the pasuk this word uva'u v'mayim amarim, that the water will enter into it? It says it in the pasuk 3 times. And each one of these times it says uvahu with an extra vav, which basically means that we have to figure out 6 drashas. What are the 6? Because again, it says 3 times vo, and Rashi quotes them here. It says 3 times vo, and it says each time with an extra vav. So again, in total, that's 6 drashas that we have to figure out in the pasuk here, according to Rabbi Kiva, that darshans not just the word, but the vav as well. Zog the Gemara. Hilkach, so now it comes out, Rabbi Kiva, according to Rabbi Kiva, Shita Kroi Ksivi. There are 6 different psukim that the pasuk here says when it talks about the water entering into her body. What are these 6 psukim? Zok the Gemara, Chad Litzavo Dida V'chad Litzavo Didei. One time, when the Torah says the term uvahu, that the water will enter into her, that's tzava. What does tzava mean? The tzava means a command. The Eibusher commands and decrees. The pasuk is saying that the Eibishter is decreeing that the water should have its effect. So it says it in the Torah, ba'u, but then it says it with a vav, uvahu, that the decree of the Eibishter that this water should have its effect is both for her, that's drinking the water, and for him, for the bayal as well. That's one vav, with the vav. Then chad la'asiyah. Another time when the pasuk says vo, there the pasuk is already speaking about when she actually drinks the water. When the pasuk says, Rashi here brings v'hishka es hamayim v'hoisa im nitma, once she already drinks the water. So over here it's talking about once it's implemented, and the pasuk is sort of promising that after she drinks it, the pasuk is promising that it will have this effect. And here again it says a extra vav chad la'asiyah didah, that is. Once the pasuk is talking about when this is actually implemented regarding her, v'chad la'asiyah didei, and another time the extra vav is regarding the fact that it will have the effect on him, on the husband as well. And then the third time it says vo, and that actually says earlier in the pasuk. So over here, why does it have to say again uvo? Chad. Another time it says in the pasuk uvo. Third time liyidiyah dida and v'chad liyidiyah didei. What this means is, Rashi explains that this is coming to notify us the order of how the effects of the water will be. And the reason why the pasuk has to notify this is because when the kohen has the woman swear and accept this punishment upon herself, it actually first says that it'll affect her thighs and then it'll affect her stomach. But when it comes to the actual seder of how it happens how the water enters her body. It goes in the stomach first, and the stomach bursts, and then the yerechech nefeles, it affects her thighs. So the kohen has to notify her that the way it'll happen is different than the lashon of the shvuah was. The lashon of the shvuah in the beginning is set to her in the seder of how the aveda happened. But the way it affects her physical body is the way the water enters into her body. So not so that no one should think that it was different than the shvuah. So the kohen has to notify the order how it will happen. But over here, the Torah says that the kohen has to notify this, and he says this once for her and once for him. So that's the 6 times that the Torah writes va'u, for tzavah, for asiyah, and for the yidiyah, and the extra vav for her and for him. This is all according to Rabbi Akiva, that darshans an extra vav. So the extra vav says that it applies to him like her. But now the Rebbe, according to Rebbe, so he doesn't darshan the vav. So there's no 6 drashas here. So tlasa kroi ksivi. The pasuk is writing uvos 3 times. Chad l'tzava, 1 for the command, for the decree of the waters. Chad la'asiyah, once when you actually do it, and v'chad liyadiyah, and 1 to notify the order of how it'll affect her. Now, so if so, the question is, Rebbe, so according to Rebbe, Kishem, Shahamayim, Baitkin Oisa, Kach, Baitkin Oisa, this drasha, that just like the waters inspect her, so too the waters inspect him and have the same effect on him, Minole. From where does Rebbe learn this out? And says the Gemara Nafkele, Midetanya, he learns it out from what we learned in the Braisa. In one of the psukim, the pasuk writes that the water went one at a time. So when it says, Uvo amayim ha'ma'arim, the pasuk says, Latzba is beten v'lanpil yorech, that it will cause the stomach to burst and the thighs to fall. Who does this refer to? Bitnoi v'yirechei shel bayil. They, over here, it's talking about the stomach and the thighs of the bayil, not of the woman. How do we know this? You're saying that it refers to the stomach and the thighs of the bayil. Maybe it goes on the woman. That would seem to be the simple pshat of the pasuk that it's referring to her. So the answer is it's not referring to her. Why? Because there's another pasuk that already says that later on, v'tzavsa bitna v'nafla yirecha. So over here it says lashon nekeva, referring to her, that her stomach and thighs will be affected. Hare bitna v'yirecha shel novela sama. So it already says the effect that it will have on her. So why is the pasuk saying this term again of beten and yarech? Here's where the Torah is telling you that it'll have the same effect on him, on the husband, or not the husband, sorry, on the bayil, on this suspected man. That's the drasha of Rebbe from this extra pasuk here. So you don't need to darshan of vav. You learn it from this extra pasuk here where it says beten and yarech. Now v'idach, according to Rabbi Akiva, what is darshan from this over here? Hahu, over here when it says beten and yerech, what is it coming to say? The moidel kayin, that the kayin has to notify her the beten bereisha, that the stomach will be affected first, and v'hodar yerech, and afterwards the yerech will be affected. Shaloi lahoitzi laz alamayim hamorim, Not that, so there shouldn't be any loss, so there shouldn't be any people are going to say, look, the water did not have the effect the way the Kain initially said it will have the effect. So the Kain has to separately notify and has to say clearly regarding the effect that it'll have on her and the effect that it'll have on him, that it's going to be in this order. That's why the pasuk is repeating over here this beten and yerech again. Now ve'idach.
People looked at from the above.
No. That he's saying this order separately on him. You have to learn out here from that it says beten and yerech. Ve'idach, and according to your other opinion, according to Rabbi, imkein lichtov kra bitna v'yerecha. The pasuk should say bitna v'yerecha, which would mean that it refers to the order of how it happens. Bitna v'yerecha, the order that the kain is media, that the beten is first and then the yerech. My beten v'yerech. Why does it use the term of beten and yerech, not lashon nekeva? Shma mina lebayil. So therefore, the fact that it uses dafke a lashon which is not lashon nekeva. If it's coming to say the order, so then it wouldn't be necessary for the pasuk to write beten and yerech. The pasuk should have written in the term that it's speaking about. What's this pasuk speaking about? It's speaking to the woman. It's speaking b'lashon nekeva. So if it's just coming to say the order of how it'll affect, it could say bitna v'yerecha, and we would understand that just like it affects her in this order, it affects him in this order as well. There's no reason to change from the usual lashon that the whole parsha here is written in. It's written in lashon nekeva. Why is it changing over here and just saying beten v'yerech, not using the lashon nekeva that it used until now? So Shema Mina L'Bayil, the fact that it uses the term Beten and Yerech, that's coming to say, according to Rabbi, that this will affect the Bayil as well. But if so, maybe, according to Rabbi, maybe this pasuk is coming to teach justice halacha, that it affects the Bayil. How could Rabbi learn out from the same pasuk 2 different points? The fact that it will affect the Bayil, not only the woman, and also he learns out that you have to notify the order, that the beten will be affected first and then the yerech. How could he learn out 2 things from the same pasuk? So the answer is because imkein lichtoiv bitnoi v'yerechai. If the pasuk is coming to speak just about the boil, then it would have used the lashon zachar. Then it would be clear that it's not lashon nekeva, and it would have used the lashon zachar. So it's talking about the fact that it affects him. My beten v'yerech. Why does he use this term of beten v'yerech stam? Not lashon zachar and not lashon nekeva. So shma mina tarti. From this I learn out, on one hand, it's coming to say the order that the beten is affected first and then the yerech. But on the other hand, it does not say it lashon nekeva to say that it affects the man and not only the woman. So you can learn out both things from this pasuk according to Rabbi. Okay, but now the Gemara comes back to the other drasha that was already mentioned in the Mishnah and mentioned here before regarding the nitma v'nitma. How do we learn out from there that both the Baal will be Aser to this Isha and the Baal will also be Aser to this Isha? So these 2 times that it says Nitma v'Nitma, what exactly is the drasha? Is it from the Vav? Is it not from the Vav? So let's see over here. So Zechariah darshan from the extra Vav, but Rabbi did not darshan from the extra Vav. Rabbi darshan from the extra word. It's written Nitma twice. So here the Gemara is going to bring a braisa and a long discussion about how this drasha works. We're going to have the beginning of it today, and the hemshech of it will be tomorrow. Tana Rabbanan, Shalosh Pamim Ho'amurim Beparsha. It actually says 3 times in the parsha, Im Nitma, Nitma, and Vinitma. Lama. Why does it have to say 3 times this term that she becomes Tameh, or she may have become Tameh? Echad Lebal. One is to say that she's Tameh, that she may not go back to her husband. The other one is the Isser that she may not go back to her boil. And and the third time is that if she was a bas kayin and her husband was a kayin, even if she was a bas kayin and her husband also was a kayin, so if in such a case she could eat truma, because she's a bas kayin and her husband is a kayin, but nevertheless, this that she becomes a Sotah passes her from eating truma. Those are the 3 times. Divrei Rabbi Akiva, that's how Rabbi Akiva understands these 3 times of nitma. Amar Rabbi Shmuel, so on this Rabbi Shmuel says kal v'chaimer, that we have a kal v'chaimer. And what's the kal v'chaimer? So now it's interesting. This kal v'chaimer that Rabbi Shmuel is going to say is going to be on a 4th halacha, which Rabbi Akiva never mentioned. And the Gemara is going to ask this. So you're going to wonder right away, what's Rabbi Shmuel bringing up a 4th halacha? But that's what it is. The Gemara will address this later. So what's the Kal V'chomer Rabbi Shmuel says? Ma grusha shumuteres letruma. A grusha, she's allowed to eat truma. Right, a woman that was married to a Yisrael, a Bas Kohen that was married to a Yisrael. What's the halacha? While she's married to this Yisrael, she may not eat truma. When she gets divorced of this Yisrael, she goes back to her father's house. V'shava, she goes back to her father's house, and now she could eat truma. But nevertheless, asura lekohona, because she's a woman that got divorced, a grusha is not allowed to marry a kohen. So now, zu shasura betrume, here, this woman is not allowed to eat trume, as Rabbi Akiva brought the drasha, that she's not allowed to eat trume, einedin shasura lekohona. Definitely, she should be aser to a kohen. That's so, like I said, you see over here that Rabbi Shmuel is coming to learn out with a Kal V'chomer that she's aser to a kohen. That here, when she becomes a Sotah, she's aser to get married to a kohen afterwards. Okay, so therefore, matamad loymar vihi. Okay, now this is a separate thing actually. It's not therefore. Matamad loymar. Rashi clarifies this is a new inyan. Okay, but again, as I said before, Rabbi Shmuel seems to be bringing up another point over here. Rabbi Akiva spoke about 3 halachas, that she becomes tummy to the Baal, tummy to the boil, and tummy that she can't eat truma. Comes Rabbi Shmuel and says, I have a Kal V'chomer to say that a Sotah could never go and marry a kohen. If she's asked to eat the truma, so she's for sure she can't go ahead and marry a kohen. Okay, so there's a 4th point. The Gemara will address this later. Okay, now the Braisa continues a separate point. Ma tamad loima. What does it mean when the pasuk it speaks about what happened here to the Sotah? So the pasuk says vihi nitma. She becomes tameh, or she became tameh. And the pasuk says, "Vihi loy nitma," or she did not become tameh. That's how the pasuk describes it. The lashon of the pasuk here is that the husband warns her, and then vihi nitma, and vihi loy nitma. So in the same pasuk it says she became tameh. It says she did not become tameh. What does this mean? So the Braisa asks, "Im nitma," if the pasuk is saying that she became tameh. Lama shaisa. Why does she have to drink the waters of the Sotah? We know she's tameh, so there's no point in drinking the waters. Im loy nitma, if she did not become tameh, so then lama mashke. Why does he have to give her to drink these waters? She did not become tameh. She's pure. She's fine. So the way to understand the pasuk is magid l'cha kasev. Here's where the pasuk is telling you the essence of the point of a Sotah. Shahasafik asura. That even though this whole thing is a doubt, we don't know what happened, but that's what the pasuk is saying. That this suffix becomes asur. Just like a vadai. She becomes asa to her husband, just as if she would have for sure been mizana with someone else, and she becomes asa to her husband. This situation where she got secluded and she's just a suffix, she's asa just like a vadai. That's what this pasuk is teaching me. So the Braisa now continues and says, Mikan atedon, from this halacha of a Sotah, that even though it's just a suffix, but she becomes completely aser, from here we learn out also l'sheretz, to the tumah of a sheretz. There are certain shratzim the Torah talks about, that if you touch them, they cause tumah. So from here we learn out a similar thing. Ma Sotah, just like when it comes to a Sotah. So over here, there's a stringency, or actually there's a leniency, that is. There's a leniency regarding a Sotah. When it comes to a woman that has a relation with someone else, so if it happened b'shegig, so the halacha is not the same as it is b'mezid. Only b'mezid she becomes asa to her husband, not b'shegig. Or v'aynis karatzen. And aynis, if it was by force, it's not the same as if it was willingly. She becomes asa to her husband by a Yisrael, unless it's a kohen. By a Yisrael, she becomes asa to her husband only if it was b'ratzen, not b'aynis. But nevertheless, even though we see these leniencies regarding this tumah, this iser, but also b'safek kavadai. The Torah says that when there's a doubt about what happened, so the safek has the same din as a vadai, that she becomes totally asa to her husband. So sheretz, when it comes to the tumah of a sheretz, if you touch a sheretz, shasa b'shegig kemezid. If you touch a sheretz, it doesn't make a difference if you touched it b'shegig or you touched it b'mezid or v'aynis keratzen. If it was by force that you touched it or you touched it willingly, it's the same halach. You become tameh the same much. So there's a stringency here. So for sure we could learn out from Sotah ein edin. So that for sure we should say shasa ba safek kavadai. That when it comes to touching a sheretz, if there's a suffix, whether you became tameh from this sheretz, the status should be just like a vade. Just if you touch, like if you touched it b'vade, you become tameh. Same also if there's a suffix, if you touched it or not, you should also become tameh. So we're learning out the tumah of a sheretz from the tumah of a Sotah. That a suffix will be metame you as well. But Now the Braisa continues and says, Umimokim shabasa. Since you're learning out this tumah by a sheretz of a suffix from the Sotah, so we have to take all the rules and the details of the situation the way it is by a Sotah. When do we say by a Sotah this stringency? That the suffix Sotah, the suffix becomes also like a vadai. Ma Sotah, Rishus HaYachid. Just like by a Sotah, this halacha applies in a Rishus HaYachid. She was secluded with a man in a private place, just two people there. Af sheretz Rishus HaYachid. So too this halacha, that the suffix of the tumah, if you touch the sheretz, will make you tumah like a vadai. That's only if this suffix takes place in a private place, in a Rishus HaYachid. And then another thing we compare to a Sotah, Uma Sotah, just like in the case of a Sotah, Davar sheyesh das lishal. The suffix is regarding the woman, and she is a person that has awareness, and we could ask her what happened, even though she may not want to answer, and she's not, therefore it remains a suffix. But she's a person that has awareness, and we could ask her about what happened. And over there we say that the suffix is like a vadai. Av sheretz, so too when we say that the sheretz, that is a suffix, will be tummy like a vadai, it's only if it's a situation where there's a davar sheyesh by das lishal. It's only if there's a person here. There's a person that you can ask what happened. So even though he may not know what happened, but the suffix is regarding a person that has das, that has awareness. Whether the suffix is if the sheretz touched the person himself, or the suffix is whether the sheretz touched a keli, a vessel that the person was holding in his hands. So there's a person here that's a bardas, right? So in other words, what is this excluding? It's excluding a case where you had kalim that were just sitting around, and then you discover that there was a sheretz in that room, and it's not clear whether the sheretz touched the keli in the room or not. But there was no person there in the room that you could ask about this. So the kalim themselves, if it's just a suffix about the keli itself, there's no das. So over there, this stringency that the suffix will be like a vadai does not apply. So the Braisa concludes, Umikan Omru. So from here, we say the following rule. If there's a suffix of tumah regarding something where there's awareness, where he has das, and you could ask him about what happened. And also, B'Rishus HaYachid. This took place where? In a private place, in the Rishus HaYachid. Sveikai Tomei. Over here, a suffix tumah will have the din like a vadai tumah, it'll be tomei. That's what we learn out from the Sotah. If this doubt of tumah takes place where in Rishus HaRabim, over there, sveikai tar. So this doubt will be tar. And v'she'ein boi das lishal, if this suffix is taking place in a situation where there is no human being there is no person that has awareness involved in this, so then, bein b'Rishus HaYachid, bein b'Rishus HaRabim, sveikai tar. Whether you were in Rishus HaYachid, whether you were in Rishus HaRabim, doesn't make a difference. The suffix will be tar, because it's not similar to the Sotah. By the Sotah, there's a woman, there's a bardas, that can answer the question that we ask her if she was tummy or not. Ad kan de Braisa. Okay, now there's a big discussion here in the Rishonim. You can see over here there's so many taisus in here about this subject of the suffix tumah, because just one point to mention that the Rishonim discuss, when you have a suffix tumah, there are situations where there's a suffix tumah where there's a previous chazakah of tara, when you have a previous status of tara, and then the suffix is going against the chazakah, then you have a situation where the suffix now is without any previous status of a chazakah of tara. So what is the Gemara speaking about over here? So that's a question, and that's a question of how we compare this to the Sotah. What is the case of the Sotah as well? So that's one of the things that Tosfos and the Rishonim here discuss at length. Okay, but the main thing though, the Gemara brought this Braisa for, is the drashas in the beginning. The drashas regarding the Sotah of the 3 times that it says v'nitma in the pasuk. Okay, so the continuation we'll learn tomorrow. The Gemara will explain what are the 3 drashas of the v'nitma that this Braisa explained.